Hello, and welcome to the Tuning In podcast. I'm Dana Evans, your inner voice and emotional support coach. In this podcast, we explore the deep wisdom that lives in our bodies, emotions, and inner voice. Together, we'll shed the layers that no longer serve us, creating space to tap into the flow of life and experience true ease. So, are you ready to join me? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. Season 6 is here. You'll probably notice that we have a new cover art updated, which I mentioned at the end of last week's episode, and we are just entering a new season. I've always, with this podcast, done the seasons more intuitively, not necessarily set with when the podcast runs. For example, I'm pretty sure this podcast started almost 5 years ago. So instead, every time I feel like I've shifted into a new season, that's when, for the podcast, I make a new season out of it. And so we are currently in season 6, even though the podcast itself actually started back in September 2019 was the very first episode. So next month will be our 5th year as a podcast. How exciting is that? And this is the 6th season. The podcast went through a few changes recently. My editor that I had forever left for a full-time job. I was so sad. Then I kind of took a pause overall with the podcast this summer. And now I've kind of figured out how to take it in-house and do editing on my own and simplified the whole process because it was all feeling too complicated for me. So I've scaled back, simplified, and now we are here together, me doing the recording, me doing the editing and uploading, and you doing the listening. So I'm so glad that you're back. But because of all that, because of all the changes, because of the sparseness of the episodes leading up, I decided this feels like a fresh start, a new season, and we got the new episode updated. We have some new fun things coming this fall for you. So thank you for being here. I just wanted to give you that little personal update about the podcast before we enter into today's episode. That's another indication of it's a new season. I had nothing to say for quite a few months. And now all of a sudden it's like every day I'm like, oh, that's a great podcast episode. Oh, that's a great podcast. So I have a whole new project category in my to-do list app that I use. It's called Things. It's so simple, guys. I mean, I'm sure there's a million apps that do this. It is the most simple app. I love it. I have been using it to do my planning every week. So every week I do like a journal brain dump of what's going on, what's on my mind in key categories, which are personal, home and yard, business, social, and podcasts. And so I made this whole new category for podcasts because I have so many ideas coming through. And despite all of that, this morning, this episode idea came through and I decided to just sit down and record it while it was fresh. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to a tea ceremony, and this is my 3rd tea ceremony ever. This is new to me. If you're familiar maybe with a cacao ceremony, it's kind of similar to that. The idea being that these really beautiful ancient teas are basically a source of plant medicine, a gentle source of plant medicine. I'm personally not a huge proponent of the big heavy hitter plant medicines that a lot of people are using. We can reach those states without any substance, and it can come totally from within. It's a really powerful thing to experience if you're willing to go there. You don't need a substance to take you there. But that being said, there is a lot of wisdom in plants, and there are a lot of ways to experience plant medicine in a much gentler way to ease your way in and to build this sensing attunement within your body. I've worked with an herbalist, Alyssa Donato. She's the one who created 2 rounds of emotional clearing sprays that she custom infused for the people who participate in the emotional edit. Those are really beautiful, and those are really powerful plant medicines. And she's also the one who introduced me to tea ceremonies. And so her tea teacher was in Santa Fe last weekend, and I went and had this really beautiful experience with tea. I got some of his tea. He's kind of like a tea collector, and you can buy these really beautiful ancient teas. And I bought one and decided to try my own tea ceremony at home. And I did it once, and I did it again today. And this is where we are. There's a lot of preamble to this episode, so thank you for hanging in there. But I was sitting there doing the tea practice and sitting in silence and sipping and processing. And what I was noticing for me in this moment was I was experiencing the tea ceremony more like I experience meditation. And it's so funny because I used to have a very strong, very consistent meditation practice. Probably for 4 or 5 years, I'd meditate most days. And it was this really beautiful thing that I did in the morning, and it was silent time. That's how I think of meditation, is silent time. As I was sitting here doing the tea ceremony, or sipping tea in silence, I noticed my natural tendency was to go into a meditative state. So I'm sitting there, I'm sipping the tea, closing my eyes, breathing, letting the brain wander. And from the wandering of the brain, let it kind of work out its kinks. Like, what am I thinking about? What am I spinning about? Where have I been stressing? And then watching that, using my breath to go into more of the calm stillness of the mind. For me, that's what meditation feels like. And then the thoughts come, and then I come back to the breath. I sip the tea, and I'm just making this spaciousness in my mind. It's a really beautiful experience. It's really supportive. I've actually been wanting to bring meditation specifically back into my practice in some form, whether it's on my walks, like silent walks, or through a tea ceremony, or through listening to an actual meditation before bed, because I was noticing I start to go to sleep, and that's when my brain is finally trying to do its daily download and processing. It's keeping me up. My brain is overworking at night because I'm not giving it enough space in the day to decompress. And this tea sipping was a really wonderful meditative experience. And as I'm sitting there, literally sipping my last cup, in meditation, I heard from my inner voice, meditation is not emotional processing. I blinked my eyes open because that really caught me off guard. I wasn't even thinking I was meditating. I wasn't thinking about emotional processing. I don't think I was thinking about anything. And then boom, this insight came in. Hello, this is why we love inner voice. When we create space, the inner voice loves to speak up and share what we need to hear. I sat and contemplated. I'm like, does this feel true to me? And what is the difference? Like, do we need to define it? The interesting thing is, last week I participated in a couple of online classes with Bella Lively, who's someone that I've studied with extensively. She is how I became certified as an inner voice facilitator, and really has informed a lot of my work as an emotional support coach and inner voice guide. It's of all the trainings, of all the certifications that I have, and there are many, let me tell you, the work that Bella Lively has done and that I've spent countless hours experiencing for myself, with her, with myself, and learning from her and from her inner voice and my inner voice. It's by far, I believe, the most impactful and effective tool that is also missing in our day-to-day lives. So I love her work. She's been running these sessions lately called Sophia sessions, these little drop-in classes that she does every day of the week. In the class, you get to drop in and do some emotional clearing. It's like a little daily emotional reset. So I joined one of the sessions, and I'm dropping in, and immediately, as she walks you through the process of coming into an emotional charge, or an emotional beanbag, as she calls them, I immediately start yawning and exhaling and feeling emotion come up and move through. It's like, wow, I was carrying this tension and I wasn't aware of that within like moments of starting the session. She's talking, my mind's thinking about this frustration that I have, and there's like all these things going on. It's by no means still and silent. So much is moving and transmuting within my system. Well, if I compare that to the experience, an equally beautiful experience that I had this morning sitting with tea, I was sitting probably for 20 or more minutes in stillness and silence. My mind was moving through some stuff, but my body wasn't. I was not yawning, which for me is like a very, very clear sign that I'm releasing emotion. And for you too, if you find yourself in a space where you feel like you're yawning a lot, you're like, oh, I'm not tired. What's going on? Why am I yawning? It's a way for your body to expel excess energy. So that's a really good sign. I was just in more of this like meditative, still state. And it's so hard to describe. Like, I'm literally sitting here talking to you and I'm picturing, I can see the two me's. Like, here's me now speaking to you. I can see me this morning sitting in stillness with the tea and the value and beauty that came from that experience. And then I can see myself last week sitting at my desk on this call doing emotional processing and the value of that experience. But they are not the same. They're so very different. When you look on the outside, it's like, okay, there's two situations where Dana is sitting down within herself experiencing things. From the internal experience, it is two very different situations. So no, they are not the same. Meditation is not the same as emotional clearing. And here's the thing, I think meditation, thankfully, has had such a beautiful time in the spotlight. It's now really well studied. There's a ton of apps out there that are advocating for meditation. And I mean, I use Insight Timer. It's one of my favorite apps for like evening wind down meditations. I do Yoga Nidra. And there's the Calm app and Headspace. And there's just so many apps. There's so many studies. There's so many even corporate businesses that are teaching meditation and bringing that into the world. I used to teach meditation. I used to teach a mindset and movement class for 5 years every semester to college students. It was greatly missing from the mental health conversation, and now it's here. And I'm just so grateful for meditation and all that it gives all of us. A lot of you listening have a meditation practice, or if you don't have a regular practice, it's something that you know about. And if you're feeling like a little spirally, what do? You're like, oh, I should probably be meditating more. I mean, that was literally my own thought to myself last week. I'm like, I need to meditate more. And, or as I call it, sitting with yourself in silence. So it's really taken off. And I remember when I first started teaching the college students, there were 50 students per semester. So I had like a really big sample size. I was working with 50 students for 3 months, 10 weeks. We'd meet every week. And I really got a good test environment for a lot of the work that I do, frankly. But at the beginning of every semester, I would ask, who has heard of meditation? And over the years, like I think the first year I asked, there was like 5 people who raised their hand. And then by the last semester that I taught before I moved here to Santa Fe, almost everyone raised their hand. And the question was, who knows about meditation? And then who practices? And it was like 60% of the group has practiced or has at least tried it once. So this is amazing. And now we see there's another gap. What's happening though in the body? What is happening in your emotional sphere? And meditation doesn't inherently address that. And it's crazy because I can think of all the years that I was doing meditation, I was not clearing emotion. I may have been clearing thoughts, but I was not clearing emotion. Even this morning, I was sitting there meditating. I wasn't clearing emotion. And for the record, I know I have emotion that I need to deal with. I literally woke up frustrated this morning. The point is, you might find that you meditate a lot. And what I want to ask you is, how often are you unhooking from emotional charges that are also causing spinning and discomfort in your system? Because the thing is, the emotional charges that we have, those can create the spinning, spirally thoughts. And then meditation addresses the mind and the thoughts, but emotional work addresses the emotions in the body. Can you feel the difference? Like, meditation really created as a mental support, mind training practice. Emotions are a body and emotional attunement practice. So they aren't the same. They can overlap. I'll tell you, every time after any sort of emotional clearing, you want to know what's going on in my mind? Nothing. It's a whole lot of silence and stillness. A lot of times during a session, what I have with someone, like, we'll start in this stillness and just kind of calm the mind and exhale the thoughts, move out of the mind so that we can get into the body. Like, they work together. And I know there are meditations where they are bringing you into the body, but your typical meditation is for the mind, and then your emotional support is for the body. My question for you is, how do you feel with your emotional practices? It's not that you need to lie there in stillness, but what we need to do when we're getting into the emotions is actually find the feeling. And it's so simple, right? It's like, I might be telling you this. Well, maybe this is new to you, but you might be hearing this like, yeah, I know I have to name my feelings. Yeah, but are you doing it? And are you doing it from your mind, or are you doing it through your body? This is the big differentiator. And I say this all the time. I will say this forever and ever. It is not your mind's job to process emotion. In order to get into the emotional processing realm, we have to go beyond the mind and get into the body. If you have a meditation practice, you could try replacing it with an emotional support practice. And there's a couple ways to do that. One, if you just want me to guide you through it, I love listening to an audio. That's why I use Insight Timer app, because I like someone guiding me through an experience. I have an audio that I created. It's totally free. It's called Moving Dense Emotions. And I think it's like 20 minutes maybe. And you can just hit play and listen to that. And as you listen, I will literally guide you through getting into your body to find a dense or heavy or sticky emotion that is causing trouble. If you have frustration in your body, like I did when I woke up this morning, you can access that and move it. So it's no longer stuck and stagnant. If you're frustrated, you're probably going to be more reactive. You're probably going to have less patience. You're probably going to be grinding your teeth or clenching your jaw or holding your belly or being like sighing in frustration. There are actions that are coming out of this frustration or this emotion that's within your body. By pausing, following my 3-step process, which I take you through in that audio, to stop, look, and listen. And if you don't want to do the audio, if you don't want to download that, I'll put it in the show notes so you have access to it. But if you don't want to, you don't need to. You can do it on your own, which is to stop, breathe, exhale, and then you just check in. You look, what's coming up emotionally? Am I feeling frustrated? Am I feeling sad? Am I feeling foggy? Am I feeling angry? And then you look and you're like, okay, where is that showing up in my body? Now, if that is really hard for you to access your body, well, let's work together, because that is really the body of my work, is bringing people into their bodies. And I worked with many clients who are like, I feel nothing. And I don't know, what do you mean? Where is it in your body? I don't feel into my body. So we work on that specifically so that you can learn to access that. It's a superpower. If you can feel that, it's like, okay, where is it? And then you listen and you go into that space and you speak to it and you breathe into it and you listen to what it has to say so it can be transmuted. It might sound freaking silly to you, but let me tell you, I have worked with person after person after person after person. And every time we actually do this process, you listen to the messages from your body, you get relief. My inner voice said this To release is to feel relief. But in order to get the release, you don't just check out from your mind and exit the body and go into the ether in a meditative land. Like, that serves its purpose, but it's not serving the purpose of clearing emotions that are in your body. So in order to release, we have to go in. We have to go into our bodies. We have to find the emotion and free it. Like, those are the steps required to release it. And really, it's transmuting it, because it turns out there are no wrong or bad emotions. Hey, my inner voice says all emotions are like a rainbow. They're like colors of the rainbow. There's no good or bad or better or worse. There's ones that the mind prefers and the mind prefers to avoid, but they're all these beautiful colors. That's why a lot of my branding has rainbows and like bright colors, because that was a vision my inner voice literally gave me, is that's how they see emotions. And that it's fun to play in all of the colors. The more we're able to experience one color has a direct effect on our ability to experience the other color, right? It's like, if you're not willing to experience indigo, you're not going to be able to experience violet. The mind's like, what do you mean? Yeah, if you're not willing to feel sadness and heaviness, it's going to have a direct effect on how blissful and elated you can feel. They work together. So a lot of times we keep ourselves kind of in a numb state where we can't feel too good, so we don't feel too bad. And as clients and myself experience the range in a different way, you find that you can feel all of the emotions more fully, and you're actually not stuck in them. So often what people say to me is, well, I'm afraid to feel the sadness because I'm afraid it's going to tip me into depression, and then I'll be stuck in depression. And I just want to feel happy. Actually, when working with someone who's skilled at supporting you and being your buoy, you actually find that I can feel the sadness without it becoming depression. And I can feel the excitement without spinning out of control and overdoing it. You can find this harmony and balance where you can oscillate between different emotions without getting stuck in any state. In fact, you always come back to the peaceful, easeful state. Whew. All right. We just went there. So that is why meditation is not the same as emotional clearing. It is also why it is really valuable to add an emotional processing practice into your system. If you're interested in learning more about that, I'll put ways to work with me down below in the show notes. You can always send me a message on Instagram at Dan_Evans. You can also just consume my podcast episodes and my Instagram content. And you can join my vitamin D newsletter where I share all of this. So there's a lot of ways to get this information if you aren't ready to dive in and work together. But if you are, I offer one-to-one, which I'm going to be opening spots for September to do 3 months together, like a deep dive and immersive experience. So we'll have one-to-one available. The audio program is coming. It's going to be the best damn emotional support program you've ever done. I'm so freaking excited for it, and it's not ready, and I'm just trusting the timing. So stay with me. I'll have a wait list for that. And then the emotional edit group. If there's enough interest, I'll put the wait list there. If there's enough interest, we will run that again. It's been a really fun one. And yeah, otherwise just continue tuning into the podcast. You can join the Vitamin D newsletter. Last week, I shared a really beautiful insight in the newsletter from my inner voice. It was all about keeping the peace. And my inner voice had said, you cannot keep the peace from a state of unease. And again, that's this emotional work. If you're agreeing to something just to make someone else feel good so you don't rock the boat, but internally there's a lot of unease, it's not actually creating the result that you think it is. I talked all about what to do instead and how to alchemize that discontent that's inside so that you can actually have peace and harmony inside and outside. So Vitamin D newsletter is a treat as well. Anyway, thank you as always for listening. I love connecting with you all. And if you didn't know, you can text me. In the show notes, it says text this. If you click that, it will open up a text message on your phone and you can send me a message. So if you have any questions, if you have follow-up, if you want me to record an episode or expand on something that I talked about, let me know. I am a very small business. I am built on community and word of mouth and connections. You as a listener are extremely important, extremely valuable. Your questions matter to me. So I don't have a team. It's just me. And so I get all the emails. I see all the comments. I see all the DMs. I see every single download of this podcast. So it means a lot if you want to engage with me. It's so fun for me. So thank you, as always, for listening. I am so grateful for you and can't wait to hear how this episode supported you and to hear what happens when you shift into an emotional support practice and not just a meditation one. Until next week, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining me in another episode of the Tuning In podcast. If you loved this episode, please rate and review it or share it with a friend. If you want to go deeper into the realm of emotions and learn the language of your body, check out my audio course, Emotions Decoded, at alignful.com/audio. As always, you can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans. See you next week.